What's our topic today, Brother Alex?
Don't do me any favors.
Hmm. Don't do me any favors.
Mhm.
A lot of these titles sound like it's some sort of Italian movie or something.
Well, you helped us come up with a lot of these, so
No, no, I'm just messing.
yeah, it's all good. Those are always my one of my favorite meetings with you are always coming up with the titles for discussions or lectures. We always
Yeah,
have a good time with that.
yeah, those are fun. Okay, let's see. Let me post these for everyone. Hopefully they're pasted. Just no, gotta do them one at a time. Here's the next one. I'll put up the ones we covered yesterday and the new ones. And 18 is the last one.
I wanted to ask you, Sheikhna, if you don't mind, before we
Sure,
begin, the
sure.
I was thinking about this the other day. How there's certain things that always kind of stick with you, or certain things that you can remember
Okay.
better than others. And I always felt like personally, I have more of like a weaker memory when it comes to memorizing things. I have to constantly try to memorize like over and over again.
Sure.
But I notice with you, you tend to remember everything. I swear you remember if I sneeze during a lecture sometimes. Like you would remember every little detail of stuff. And I
SubhanAllah,
don't
those things, but we don't remember the important things.
I think you remember a lot of the important things though. It seems to be that way. So, do you have like any tips on memorization or anything that like people could do that you would advise to help like remember things or just when studying things?
Well, I'll tell you what I discovered myself, and then later on, I started reading up on, and I discovered that there was only one way really to do it. At least for me, some people they naturally have an ability to create those neuronal pathways like right away. They see something once and they get it.
Mhm.
They remember it right away. For me, I'm not like that. So in college, I remember I bought all these courses on memory and stuff like that. I used to have a problem with that, and I realized the problem wasn't with my my ability to retain information. It was how I was doing it. So even though I bought a memory system, and they taught me how to remember people's numbers and people's faces and people's names and all that sort of thing, I realized first of all, I don't know if you know this about me, but I went to design school, so I got in with a scholarship in artistic excellence. So I'm very visual, you know. I'm very visual. So this is other than the physiology degree that I did before.
Mhm.
So I'm very visual. So I remember things visually. A lot of people are visual learners, when you're an artist, you tend to remember the fine details. That's why I remember those things that you mentioned. Um, uh, that's probably why. I also notice a lot of things. That's why I remember these things. Um, and I think that also helps you become a good communicator when you notice, for example, there are people who you could be like having the worst day ever, and they're like flying on, cloud number 9, and they never notice that you're down,
Mhm.
right? But uh, there are others who know. They're very meticulous, very empathetic, and the reason why is because they notice everything. Behavior, the subtle nuances of facial expressions and that sort of thing. So that answers that part of your question. I don't think it's a memory thing as much as it is, because I'm a little more visual maybe, in that sense. So I remember those intricate details. I wish they were useful in some instances, you know.
No, they are very useful. I mean, there's times too, like you'll see somebody that you haven't seen in years. I've been with you. You will tell me you haven't seen this person in years, and you remember who their brothers' names are, their sisters' names, where they went to college. You remember all that stuff.
Yeah, well, for that stuff, what I do to remind myself is like, let's say we first meet, and right off the bat, I'll put where I met you, and I'll put whatever information you gave me about you, and I'll put it in my phone. Okay, and that helps me every time that you call. You know, I won't put people's faces on my phone, because I remember faces very well. Uh, so I'll put that information. That helps me every time you call, every time we communicate. I always have something there that, you know, is going to help me jog my memory. You know, so for example, I know a lot of Ali's, right? So
Yeah.
I put Ali MYC retreat, Ali UNI program. You know, and if there's something that like, specifically, you asked me, that very first question that you asked when I met you, that's usually a trigger for me to remember a lot of things. It's exactly like when you give a presentation and you put your, just the points as opposed to writing the details, and it's the points that trigger your memory. So yeah, I do use that. And then when it comes to like other things like, memorizing, let's say verses or hadiths, it's just repetition, Alex. That's all it is. I mean, that's just traditional repetition. You know, the more you repeat, the more the neuronal pathways you set that have the information in there, the quicker you can, um, tap into them. That's just repetition. So, for example, a lot of the hadiths and stuff like that, the Islamic laws in many cases, uh, you know, I'm constantly teaching. If I'm not teaching how as a student, I'm teaching, you know, someone in the West, or I'm teaching my kids. You know, usually whatever lectures I give, I always give them to my kids first before I give them to anybody else. Any hadiths that you see me say, you know, you'll see that I give them to my children first before I give them to anyone else, because I really believe that, before I can affect anybody's kids, I have to be able to affect my kids. Before I teach anyone, I have to teach my kids first, you know? So that way I can be more effective. Otherwise, I'd just be a hypocrite. I'd be telling people, you need to teach your kids this, and I haven't done it myself. And I think that kind of gives a little bit of tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum, Haj Jamil. How are you?
Alaikum assalam, Sheikhna. Yes, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, actually.
I mean, I know my kids get sometimes frustrated with me because it might be too much information sometimes, but I
Sure.
think they're seeing the results, you know, as they grow older. When they go to retreats and they're in debates, and people say, you know, there was this one girl who responded this way, and then, you know, they find out she's my daughter, for example, right? Or it's my son, for example, and he's answering questions and stuff like that. And I think they see that as time goes along. You know, I'm from a family of academic scholars as opposed to religious scholars. So for me, having that sort of atmosphere and environment of religious scholarship is very important for me, because academic scholars tend to be very, even though my father is very humble, but the professors that I grew up around, many of them aren't necessarily very humble. It's all about me, what I discovered, and, you know, what I did, and I. So you kind of get sick of that after a while, you know. So dealing with profs doesn't faze me. That might be why. And so I think for me, more the religious environment, religious scholarship is what, you know, what helps me understand, what has really helped me understand myself, how I learn, how I, you know, has been a process, how I memorize has been a process. There are some things that work for some and don't necessarily work for others, but there's nothing better than repetition. Repetition. You know, that's the best thing you could do. It's exactly like establishing muscle memory when you're playing a sport, right? Anybody who's played a sport will tell you muscle memory is really important. and that only comes with repetition. Whether you're a martial artist or a basketball player or a soccer player, if you're a martial artist like Hajj Jamil, for example, and Hajj Mike,
Repetition builds habit.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's exactly why when we get done from work and we drive home, sometimes it's like mindless. We don't really. Next thing you know, we're home. We don't even know how we got there. Sometimes we're so busy thinking about other things. Sometimes you want to go to the grocery store. Next thing you know, you're at your home, and you're like, oh, what happened, right? And that's just the actual neuronal pathways just taking over for you. You're on auto drive as opposed to. It's a scientific fact too. It's proven. I spoke about it last year in the series of lectures at the MYC. Hajj Jamil will tell you. I think those lectures are up too if you wanted to watch them. Yeah. Okay, shall we get started?
Yes, thank you very much for your insight on that.
Okay, we have Brother Ahmed, Salam Alaikum, Brother Ali Hannawi, miss you, brother. Okay, Brother Sheikh Ali Abu Khudr, Sister Fatma, Sister Zainab Abu Ta'am, Brother Ibrahim, how are you, brother? Brother Rami, may Allah bless you, Sister Isra, Sister Aya. Okay.
صبحكم الله بالخير شيخنا.
صبحكم الله بالخير حبيبي Sheikh Ali. May Allah bless you, inshallah. Accept your deeds, bi'awnihi ta'ala. Okay, so today the topic of our lecture, it seems, is don't do me any favors. And our goal, inshallah, today is to finish the Surah Al-Hujuraat, inshallah. And with that kind of, we can say that in the month of Ramadan, we're able to comprehensively finish a really, important surah that has a lot of important meanings within it, that really uncovers a lot of truth, that helps us deal with the current situation we're in also. You see how the verses of the Holy Quran can be really applied practically to our everyday lives. With a little bit of insight, we're able to see a great deal, right, of how the Holy Quran is relevant to our lives. And of course, going back to context is what gives us examples that we can learn from. And it also helps us uncover certain truths when it comes to Islamic history and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to know as well in that regard, so that we can separate. It becomes basically like a tool of an epistemological tool that separates between truth and falsehood, right? So literally becomes a furqan. Furqan is what is the separator between truth and falsehood. Just like Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhi, is al-furqan. Okay, so the verses we're going to be covering today, I posted up. I hope everybody can see them. So we already finished 14 and 15. And today we're doing, inshallah, verses 16, 17, and 18. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَتُعَلِّمُونَ اللَّهَ بِدِينِكُمْ. And do you teach your Lord his, of course it's his own religion, but he says بِدِينِكُمْ, in your religion, meaning in reference to the religion of Islam, right? وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah knows all that is within the heavens and the earth, and Allah is all-knowing. And then it says, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. They hold favors over your head saying that, oh, we became Muslim. قُلْ لَا تَمُنُّوا عَلَيَّ إِسْلَامَكُمْ. Don't do me any favors, just because you decided to become Muslim. Don't hold that as a favor over my head, okay? That's actually where the title of the lecture comes from. Don't do me any favors. بَلِ اللَّهُ يَمُنُّ عَلَيْكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that should be holding favors over our heads. And hadakum, because he guided you, lil-iman. He showed you the path to faith, to iman. In kuntum sadiqeen, if you are truthful. If you are truthful and you're looking for the truth and you're sincere to Allah, then Allah will pave the way for you to find the truth. But if your goal is deviation and fitna, then, at the end of the road, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will let the truth reign and falsehood fall. Inna Allah, the next verse, Inna Allah ya'lamu ghayba as-samawati wal ard. Allah knows the unseen of the heavens and the earth. Wallahu basirun bima ta'malun. And Allah sees very clearly what you're trying to do. Okay? So these verses are extremely important. I want to take, before I look at context, I'd like to apply them to our daily lives, like we've done before. How many of us see people out there that, when it's time, for example, for prayer, right? What they do is, you nicely try to say to them, do you want to play? Do you want to pray with me? Not play with me, pray with me, right? And then they say to you, yeah, I got it. I'll just pray later, right? They're like, why don't you pray with me, Jama'ah? At least we'll get the thawab. Ya khayy, leave me alone. Illi fini bikfini, right? Right? As though he's doing you a favor, right? As though he's doing you a favor, You remind him, you say, don't forget to call your mom, right? Don't forget to go to the Jama and pray. I'd love to see you in Jum'ah. Ya khayy, ma badna nishtaghal, right? شو اسلام الدين دين بدك يعني ما خلاص, right? Right? Enough is enough يا اخي, اللي فيك كافيني. يعني what are they saying to you? They're saying to you, look, I'm doing enough, okay? So I've done you a favor that I'm still a Muslim. There's that sensibility, unfortunately. That's really what they're saying. And the problem is they're not saying that to you. What they don't realize is they're saying that to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many people have had situations like this? Let's hear some situations from you where you've had something similar. Haj Jamil is laughing, so I'm expecting a story. Turn your mic on. Let's hear it.
Okay, well, I mean, sorry. I mean, you can see it at both ends, right? I mean, haven't we went through life going through the first part where we're telling the person, hey, we've done enough, and further in your life, and then you start doing your more amel, and then you start getting other people, right? And they are doing the same thing that you did. But I mean, it takes time, I guess.
Ahsan, that's very good insight. That's very good. It's almost like a cycle, right? Anybody else? Come on, some of you must have some juicy stories. Come on, brother Alex, let's hear it. You want to talk.
Why do you have to call me out?
Because I can tell from your smile, you've got a story, at least one, if not a few.
Yeah, I actually have a lot of them with that. But I think what Haj Jamil was saying is actually like the right way to look at it and to go about it, though. Because you're not always gonna come across people too who are like at that point where they want to start, for example, like praying with you, or even some of them who are not even praying yet, in fact, and they don't even want to reveal that to you. So you kind of just have to be patient with them. And what I like to do is just personally is kind of take it step by step with them, be patient with them, and like slowly lead them. Not lead them. I don't want to make it seem like I'm tricking people, but you just kind of like hang around a little bit and slowly bring in the discussions of like praying or like Islamic discussions and whatnot, without them kind of realizing it. That kind of sounds bad, but I hope I made that make sense.
Yeah, I think so. Anybody else? Brother Anwar, please share.
Let's see. Well, I remember I used to work with this older man, and every time it would be time for Salah, just a small story, nothing. It's just every time it would be time for Salah, I'd always insist on praying Jama'ah with him, because for the thawab, and I would always remind him. Some days I would bring up different hadith, It's like, "Shibad ma hey shagla, man." And he just like disregards it completely. He's like, "Yalla salli, khalas, just khalasni, man. Yalla, we have to get back to work, man." It's gonna take the same amount of time though if we pray Jama'ah. You know, we don't necessarily have to all this mustahabbat, but I guess that's the story I have.
Okay, that's a good story. That was a funny one. Sure, Haj Mike, you have anything for us? You look like there's something deep down inside that's there, but you're holding back. Yalla, anybody else? Sister Isra, Sister Tala, I see two people smiling there. Means they have a story to share. Yalla.
I had a friend tell me one time, Sheikhna, you have a Quran verse for everything. Why? Why every time there's a situation you can relate it to a Quran verse? It's like, oh, I'm sorry.
Sister Tala.
So this actually happened today, that's why I'm laughing. We're getting ready for iftar, and my mom's like she's like, "Come on, wake up, like let's go eat. Make sure you get ready for salah first before iftar." And someone in my family just goes straight to the prayer mat from like sleeping on the couch, and she's like, "You have to go do wudu. What are you doing?" He's like, "I have to do wudu. Come in after I slept. There's too many rules." I was like, "This is ridiculous. Like we're at a point right now. Come on."
That's funny. Wudu too? Oh my God. Sister Zainab says the same happens to her every time. I always respond back with Quran verse in response to Sister Isra. I'm always attacked for that. Okay. Who else? Come on, we have Sister Farah, Sister Malak, Brother Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
How are you doing?
Ahlan.
I suppose a little bit of a different situation for me is like sometimes I would be on campus with a friend and I would say, and it would be after class and I'd be like, all right, let's go pray, you know, because we have like a designated spot at the Wayne State Library. Some people here might know about it, where there's like a small place where you can pray in like the hallway and it's kind of secluded. But one time I was with a friend and he was like, no, I'll pray at home. I always pray at home, you know? So that's kind of like, you can see the level of priority there, you know, or just being uncomfortable practicing outside of the home.
Yeah. Well, that's one. It could also be that the person is too embarrassed, for example, afraid that they're making an error in their prayer and they might be judged. That's another. That could also. Ahsant. Anybody else? Who else do we have?
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Sister Malik.
So this is actually a story of like not me telling someone, but rather like me and my roommates when I was in college would always kind of encourage each other to like stay on top of our prayers. So whenever we'd go out to study, we would like make sure we're on wudu, and then whenever it's time to pray, like all of us would go down to like the reflection room and pray together. And then if like one of us has been out all day and like you have to go home or something, then we'd go to our apartment and just all pray together. Like we'd kind of encourage each other instead of one of us feeling a little lazy and not wanting to like get up and go to the apartment to, you know, do wudu and pray. We just kind of push each other.
That's really good. That's tawfiq. To have like that sort of dynamic is a blessing from Allah. Ahsanti. Anybody else? Come on, I know there's some juicy stories out there. Share them. Don't deprive us. That way we don't feel like we're all alone in this world.
Yeah.
Sheikh Ali, give us some input.
Sheikhna, you're gonna put me on the spot.
Exactly.
To be honest, I've been trying to recall something like that, but nothing is coming to mind. To be honest.
That's good. Good for you. That's tawfiq.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. No, I'm pretty sure I've faced situations like that, but nothing is coming to mind.
Okay. All right. Let's see if anybody else can come up with something while Sheikh Ali.
In the Lebanese dialect, they say, you know, we say بيربح الله جميلة يعني
yeah.
يعني
Exactly.
I'm trying to think. One thing comes to mind is one of one of my friends is a great aunt, and she's old in age. It's a funny thing, she saw him, he prays and he takes time in his prayer.
Okay.
She told him that I pray very quickly. Why do you take so long? And he told her that's why he prays so long. She has a philosophy that if you take a long time in prayer and you pray a lot, then you have a lot of dhunub. You have a lot of sins, and that's how you pray so much. It was funny when he relayed that story to me.
That's funny. Somebody told me that about Hausa here in Najaf. He said, "There's no way you left your life of luxury, your wonderful job, your
Yeah.
great salary, and you came to Najaf, right, where there's like no electricity, sometimes no, water, right?
Najaf
And
is so hot in the
you
summer.
have so many dhunub that you're trying to make up for." Yalla, anybody else? I'm still waiting. I know there are stories out there. Can't be the only person who's the few of us who have experienced this.
I remember in high school, we used to have a hallway and where we used to pray. And
Okay.
every time we had like the Salah squad, we used to pray.
Let's go. I like that. Okay.
And my friends, like Sheikh Hadi was mentioning, I would take my time when I pray. Even though I have class, like I wouldn't take too long, but I would just pray at a normal speed to what I thought was a normal speed. And they always it would be like an inside joke, like whether throughout the school day or throughout the week, they always knew me as like the person who takes long to pray. So I had my own spot reserved in the back, so that no one has to wait for me to finish praying, so that they can go ahead and go to the shoes and leave. So
So you were the guy that delays everyone.
yep, exactly.
That's funny. Allah accepted your prayer already. I had this person, I remember, we would pray in the morning together, and one day, so sometimes you have extra energy to like do a'mal, right? And sometimes you don't. So as much as possible, I try to recite Dua al-Ahd every morning, of course, Hadith al-Kisa right after, and then Dua Makaram al-Akhlaq. Okay, so this friend of mine who I was praying morning prayer with, he said to me every morning, "You're killing me. I need to sleep." He said, Wallah, he said to me, I felt so guilty when he said that to me because I really thought of my kids, because I thought like he's older, and what's that doing to my children?
Like you're keeping him.
Yeah, like I remember one time I was about to finish. I told him, listen, you don't have to stay up with me. He's like, I just feel bad. How can I leave you by yourself? I said, well, it's between me and Allah. What do you want from me? So he's like, no. And he got so mad at me. He said, you know what? Allah doesn't want us to do all this extra work, right? Islam is supposed to be a religion of ease. You keep saying that. Why are you doing all of this? I can't handle it. I said, okay, relax. We don't even have to pray Jama'ah together. SubhanAllah. It was so funny. And this is like someone who is considered to be like very religious too, right? So that was pretty funny to see, because praying morning prayer regularly with someone, you really learn a lot about them. Like in the retreats, when people go and they have to wake them up in the mornings, and everybody's like, Alhamdulillah, astaghfirullah, la ilaha illallah during the day. Well, when it comes to morning prayer, our reality shows.
Yeah, those are the funnest parts of the retreat, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, so the reason why this topic is important to us isn't necessarily because of other people, it's really because of us too. I mean, am I saying to Allah, am I that person saying that to Allah? Am I doing Allah favors? Am I the type of person that sees myself as someone who's doing enough. Like, you ever, for example, talk to someone and try to convince them to give charity, and they're like, listen, I already give to charity. You know, I give to this charity and this charity. I'm fine, right? It blows me away when somebody says that to me. And I wonder for myself, like, if I'm like that, like, do I look at, you know, if someone comes to me and says, you know, give to this charity, I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give to this charity. Like, someone in Najaf said to me, you know, there's in the Arab world, there are a lot of people who are begging, you know, specifically there are women and children, right, that are given that job function. For many of them, it's a job, because they actually go and they collect money, and then they take it to a central location, and then it's divvied up, you know. The problem is you don't know who does that and who doesn't, right? So for me, I always take the standard, you know, that, you know what, it doesn't matter, because Allah knows best. So my intention is to just give if I have, even if it's like 25 cents. And here, for our 25 cents, in the US, they have something called rubu', which is basically 250 dinars, right? Which is pretty much the same thing. So that's like the least you could give. So you always have a rubu' floating around. You try to give away. So I remember I was walking with someone, and they said to me, you know, don't give this person. You don't know where it's going. And I thought to myself, man, you know, if I start thinking, you know, because then I'll start thinking, I know myself. I'll start thinking, oh, I've given enough. What do I need to give for? Right? And I remember he quoted a verse in the Holy Quran. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and, you know, basically, and don't open your hand all the way, you know, and don't close it all the way, right? Because what's going to happen is when you close it all the way, then obviously there's harman. You're not giving enough at all. You're not giving anything at all. But if you open it up all the way, then Allah says, تَقْعُدَ مَلُومًا مَحْسُورًا. You'll end up in a state of just regret, because now you don't have anything for yourself. So it strikes me that when, you know, people say to you, you know, you're giving too much, right? And really, you're only giving like 25 cents, or you're giving like maybe $1 or something like that. And I wonder, like, if I've done that before, is it because of self-projection? Like, I'm projecting how I feel, that maybe I've given enough. So, you know, if I see someone giving in front of me, I become manna' lil khair. I become a person who prevents others from doing good, you know, which is terrible in Islam to be that way. As opposed to saying, for example, after the person gives, to say to them, you know, either suggest to them charities, you know, or other charities, or to talk to them about, you know, you're making sure that you have enough for yourself, right? You know, just something like that, as opposed to saying, you know, don't give. That's one. Two, that realizing myself that, you know, if I see someone who may be doing more a'mal than me, right? Is that something that necessarily affects me negatively, and I project negative ideas inadvertently? And then, you know, in my relationship between me and Allah, and this is really where it's at, right? Why is it that I don't wake up for morning prayer? You know, why is it because I really feel that my Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha are on point? So I don't really need the morning prayer, you know? I remember when I was younger, we didn't know, because, you know, I mean, my father prayed and fasted. My mother was religious. She prayed and fasted, but their knowledge wasn't, you know, strong. So I remember having a discussion in the car when I was younger. I think I was about like maybe 9 or something. Is waking up for morning prayer wajib even? Because there is this idea that floats around in the Sunni school of thought. And we were living in a Sunni country at the time in Kuwait. And it was literally a radio show. I remember in the morning that we heard that, you know, it's not wajib to wake up for morning prayer. And we started having this discussion back and forth, you know. And I started thinking to myself, why wouldn't it be wajib if Allah ordained that it's at that time? Then when I started gaining more knowledge and learning, you know, I realized, of course, it's wajib. I realized also that when you do a'mal, you're not doing it you're helping yourself at the end of the road, right? Then I wasn't worshiping Allah just for fear of hellfire, because most of us, when we're kids, we learn to worship Allah for fear, out of fear of hellfire, because our parents would say to us, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. If you don't do this, you're going to burn in hell. If you don't do that, you're going to burn in hell. Which is one of the reasons a lot of people end up, leaving the faith or disconnecting from it, right? There's these negative patterns that have been instilled in us and that are hard to get out. Imam Ali, he says, al-ilmu fi as-saghar kan-naqshi fi al-hajar, that learning it from a young age is like carving in stone. So even if I believe it intellectually and rationally that something isn't good, when it's ingrained in me behaviorally, I end up doing it or not doing it as a result, or believing in it or not believing in it, and I have to literally reprogram myself. So snip out the code that's bad and put in code that's good, sort of thing, right? For those programmers amongst us. So I think that if I myself, for example, decide, you know what, I'm not going to wake up for Salat al-Layl, or I'm not going to pray Salat al-Layl, as an example. Let's say the wajibat were done, okay? There's two things that happens here with Salah. One thing is with the wajib, one is with mustahab. With the wajib, I delay my prayer, and then what happens is I say, well, I prayed it. The end of the road, I prayed it. What do you want? Right? And what am I doing when I say that? When I'm delaying my prayer, I'm saying to Allah, you know what? That meeting's not important. I've done enough. Okay, so I'm just going to pray when I pray. You've given me that window. When in reality, the narrations say that when you delay your prayers on the day of judgment, those who delay their prayers without a valid excuse, on the day of judgment are resurrected as Jews and Christians, because Jews and Christians don't have a lot of time of prayer. I mean, that's problematic. I remember reading that the first time in Al-Muntakhab al-Hasani, when I first got married. My wife has Al-Muntakhab al-Hasani, and I was reading in it, and that's what I found. And that just flabbergasted me. I said, oh my God, I'm never going to delay my prayer again, right? So this was in 2001. So I started getting a lot of knowledge after that, because I said, what else am I, not attentive to that I didn't know? I realized I started reading books of akhlaq from scholars. There's the Arba'una Hadith by Ayatollah Khomeini, for example. That's a great book. All of our scholars who are at the marja' level, they actually, before they become maraja', they have several things. They do a commentary on a book called Al-Urwa al-Wuthqa for fiqh. And then what they do is they basically have 40 hadiths, a book of 40 hadiths that they publish. And this book was very profound. It affected me a lot. I remember I literally, I don't think I've ever spent so much on a book, because the way he talks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the way he addresses himself, he says, he talks to him about, he says how lowly he is. And here you're talking about a grand marja', like you're not talking about a regular guy, He's talking about how lowly he is, how deficient he is, how unworthy he is, right? And for us, when we pray 5 prayers on time, we're like, whoa, you were on top of the world, right? Allah loves me, right? Today I prayed on time. But here's a marja' who prays on time, has dedicated himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to serving, humanity. And here he is addressing himself as though he's talking to someone who is just a criminal almost, right? He's criminalizing himself, how his behaviors, how he's deficient, how he's not doing enough. And that really made me reflect, like, how much have I been duplicitous? Like, he addresses the issue of ujb, which means duplicity, which means basically, riya and ujb. Riya meaning that you do things for other people. So let's say I get up and pray on time just so that, my parents see me pray on time, or my friends see me pray on time, or I tell my friends it's time for prayer, just to prove the point that I'm a person who prays on time. So I remind people. I know the sincerity in my heart, whether it's there or not, right? Or for example, I say, well, let's read dua so-and-so. you know. And then, you know, I get up there and I'm reciting, and I'm practicing reciting because I want everybody to hear how beautiful my voice is, right? Or that I know this dua really well. Nobody would know. It would only be you and Allah that knows the sincerity in your heart, if it was for Allah or not, right? Right, Hajj Jameel? Yeah. So it's such a fine point in my state of iman, riya specifically, because nobody will know except for Allah, really. Nobody can judge your intention. Only Allah knows it. So the problem is that Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq says, من عمل للناس كان أجره على الناس ومن عمل لله كان أجره على الله. He who does a deed to please people, then his reward is from the people. And he who does a deed to please Allah, then his reward is from Allah. So if I do riya, which means that I get up, let's say, to pray just to show off to people how well I pray, or I recite just to show people how well I recite, then really what I've done is I've worshipped those people, because I've done my worship for them, not qurbatan ila Allah, not seeking nearness to Allah, but seeking nearness to brother fulan or sister fulan, right? And again, no one's going to know that except for me. So I remember in the olden days when Sayyid Hassan Bazoun and Hajj Jalal Mughniya and brother Ahmed Ayoub and brother Hussein Amir and Hajj Wissam Bazzi and Sheikh Muhammad al-Sa'di, we were all one team. You know, it was called Ascent TV, and we were pushing out online programming.
Ascent TV.
Yeah, Ascent TV. And we had a show called 440, four guys with 40 hadiths, okay? And what they had to do was basically shoot episodes. Each one had to be one of the 40 hadiths of that book. And they took, for example, duplicity, and I remember riya. And I remember Sayyid Hassan Bazoun, he has a, mashallah, really beautiful voice. So he basically, you know, was doing his adhan, and they were all in jama'ah prayer. So he was doing his adhan, and then he did his prayer, and he had so much khushu', and he's looking right, left, you know, to make sure that people notice him, right? He's like clearing his throat and making sure he sounds good. And then when he was done, they all rushed to him. Brother Jalal, at the time, he was Brother Jalal, not Hajj Jalal. Brother Ahmed Ayoub, Brother Hussein Amir. And they were like, MashaAllah, you have such beautiful form in your prayer. Please teach us so we can be like you. So he says, well, you know, I don't know. It takes a lot of years of practice to get this good, right? And, but, you know, who am I to teach you, right? I mean, I know I have a beautiful voice, and I know my recitation is amazing, but, you know, it's all from the tawfiq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they say, well, you know, could you just give us a course? He's like, honestly, I really have to go right now. You know, I'm fasting, right? They're like, oh, it's like 10 p.m. You should have broken your fast at 7:30. He's like, well, I feel that the extra time brings me closer to Allah. And then he says, they say to him, well, why don't you come with us? We'll you know, get you some food and we can spend some more time with you. He said, no. I only break my fast on bread and salt, you know, and he walks out, right? So of course that was more of an exaggeration of, like, you know, the situation. But the idea was basically to try to hit the issue of riya as much as possible, and really have us question ourselves, how much of that is in me? How much of that is something that I do, right? I remember we had another episode where Hajj Jalal Mughniya, he was basically this rich guy, you know, all blinged out, you know, with his rings and his chains, and he was this really religious rich guy, right? And we made this scene as though they're in a restaurant and stuff. And one of the brothers said to him, you know, it's really great what you're doing for the Jama', right? So he says, well, you know, I mean, I try to help everyone, and but you know, when is enough? Like, I've done so much for God, right? It's like, I've done so much nobody's done as much as I've done for God, right? And this is ujb. This is when you're so kind of conceited and self consumed with what you've done and how great work you've done that you think you've done God a favor, right? And this is another pitfall that we can fall into. Oh, I've given enough charity for this month. Really? Have you given enough charity? Are you doing Allah a favor? Right? Do you not have like some spare change laying around that you could give away that someone else can benefit from? Right? I think Sister Aya wanted to share a story. Where is she? Sister Aya, please go ahead and share your story. Or Sister Nagam, sorry. I think it was Sister Nagam, yeah. Sister Nagam, go ahead.
No, it's completely fine. I forgot about it, so don't worry about it.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Wallah, Sheikhna, don't worry about it.
Share it if you remember it.
I will, don't worry about it. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to leave you guys for like 5 seconds or 10 seconds to get my charger. So share some stories with Sheikh Ali, and I'll be right back.
I think I seen brother Thurgam in here. Where is he? We're gonna put him on the spot.
Salam, Sheikhna.
Alaikum assalam, Sayyid. Thurgam, how are you?
I'm good, man. How's everything?
Good to hear your voice, man.
Habibi. You been good?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How's Shahr Ramadan?
Alhamdulillah. It's a little stuck at home, but we're trying to do our best.
You're still
Let's
built
keep
with
up
grit,
on
though. Still built with grit, though.
We're trying, man. How's everything with you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. You want to share anything with us?
Well, I mean, in terms of like dealing with those situations.
Yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, I mean, if you got anything on the matter, that'd be great.
Let me see. Put me on the spot. But
You know, one thing that I think is admirable, and the thing that you do is the other day we were talking, me and one of my siblings, and we're talking about like these athletes, the great athletes like Tom Brady, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and how disciplined they are with their lifestyle. Like if you look into their lives, they all sleep at a certain time and they all wake up early in the morning, and they hit the gym very early in the morning.
no, yeah, a lot of athletes they model their routine
Yeah,
like that.
So they're very disciplined with their lifestyle, and that's something that I believe we can learn from a lot, especially when it comes to Salat al-Fajr, like Sheikh Aous was saying. I feel like a lot of us were just very inconsistent. You know, one day we sleep like at 1 a.m., one day we're like at 3 a.m., one day it's like at 11. So we're all over the place. That's something that we can really take from people like that.
No, yeah, my discipline definitely stemmed from, all the sports I played growing up. And that's why I think, sports in general and, keeping yourself active is huge, and disciplining yourself. And then it can translate to other things like religion and like
Ahsan.
a nice alarm clock as well.
Definitely, that's definitely that will definitely help you with tahdib al-nafs.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
That's good advice. So if you're active, it's actually scientifically proven that you sleep better and you wake up earlier. Like you will literally. Yeah.
You heard what I said before that, Sheikhna?
Yes. About LeBron and Kobe and the programs that they have, waking up early and the discipline.
Even like the successful CEOs, they're all like very similar with that. They all wake up. If they're all Muslims, I was thinking about it, if they're all Muslims, they would probably be praying Salat al-Layl, waking up before dawn. They wake up, some of them, like at 5,
4. Usually the formula is waking up at 4. The most successful people in the world, according to surveys, wake up actually at 4 a.m.
Yeah, the reason I brought it up because the other day I was like on Instagram and I seen this podcast where they bring on like the parents of athletes, and they had Tom Brady's parents, who's well-known quarterback who now plays for the Buccaneers. And his father was saying he sleeps like around 10, 11 every night, and he's up by 5 and he's in the gym.
Yeah.
And so that discipline is very admirable to see in somebody, and
But
hopefully
see,
that.
what is the reason for that discipline? You might have heard me say that there's that belief, value, commitment system, right? So if I value something, I'm going to believe in it. If I believe in it, then I'll be committed to it. The problem is, the reality is that when I decide not to sleep early, or I decide to ignore the time of morning prayer, or to pray on time, what I'm really doing is it's a reflection of the value I've given Allah and how much I value prayer. It just means that I really haven't really understood the value of prayer, because I haven't understood the value of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so my belief in it becomes weak, and my commitment to it becomes weak as well, right? So what I need to do is I need to improve my tawheed. That's why you guys always hear me at the beginning of every lecture proving Allah's existence. Every single lecture, I'm like, that's the reference point for everything, so that I make sure I've established those neuronal pathways in your brain over and over and over, because it's that repetition that we were talking about, Hajj Alex. That repetition is essential. So if I repeat it over and over and over and over again, then what's going to happen is it's going to be part of my system. Even if I don't say it and I hear it, it's part of my system. We've gone beyond the frequency of 3 in marketing, right? We've gone beyond it, way beyond it. So that reference point is extremely important in order to establish that. Now, 2 things that I could be saying when I don't do that. It could be that, I don't know, but B, it could be that, I know that there's something like that. I've heard it. Sheikh Aous, other sheikhs, other sayyids have mentioned it, importance of waking up in the morning. But see, I don't necessarily value Sheikh Aous, right? I value him in that, he comes around, he teaches us something every now and then, but I don't value him. And that's okay. The problem isn't valuing Sheikh Aous. I'll be honest with you. I love everyone, but I could care less if you value me. I want you to value Allah, right? That's the most important. That's why I'm doing. It's exactly like someone who's discovered the treasures and the beauties of the universe, right? And he's coming to you and he's saying to you, listen, behind that mountain, okay, there are so many riches and so many beautiful things, right? But the problem is you've got to believe in that person, and the reality is that one person is limited, whether it's me or whether it's another sheikh or another sayyid or whomever. That person is limited unless he can inspire something in you that allows some pore, within the brain or within the heart to just kind of open up slightly, and next thing you know, it just breaks open and it receives. It receives that the knowledge, it receives the mercy, it receives the blessings, it receives the benevolence of Allah, and it just showers you and takes you over. I remember when I was in California years back, in Burbank, I was taking some lighting training in lighting, okay, and how to light sets and stuff like that. And the guy who was teaching me was considered a guru in his industry. He taught lighting at USC DreamWorks, the company DreamWorks that makes all the movies. Yeah. So he was an expert in his field, and it was a one-on-one session. We paid a good amount of money for it. And I remember when I went over there, we talked a lot. He's a great guy, very insightful. And one day he said to me, I don't know, one day I walked into the studio, I turned on the lights, and I saw, literally, he said, I saw the waves as they left the light, and they traveled and hit the ball and bounced off, and they basically came onto me, and I felt like I was drowning in waves of light. And he said, I didn't know what that was. I didn't understand what that was. He said to me, it was something really amazing to me. So I went and I started asking. I went and I asked gurus. I went and I asked a Hindu guru, what is that? And he said to me, it's a state of nirvana. Okay. Nirvana is basically this utopic state of arfan. This is what nirvana is. In Arabic, we call it arfan, gnosis, right? That you've reached a level of knowing something, that you've reached its reality. or at least you know, a portion of its reality, whatever Allah allows us to see of it. So, you know, I was listening to him and listening to him. I said to him, you know, what you just described about light, imagine if you had the same experience with your hearing. Imagine if you had the same experience with your smell. Imagine if you had the same experience with your taste. Imagine if you had the same experience with your touch. Imagine if you had the same experience with your insight. So I said, here, come over here. Let me, I said, stand over here. We had a wall. And I said, I want you to face the wall. I'm going to talk, right? So I talked, and the sound waves basically bounced off the wall to his ears. I said, now bring me your ears. And I spoke into his ears. I said, into one of his ears. I said, do they sound the same? He said, no. I said, they're totally different, right? He said, yeah. I said, this one is a diluted, convoluted reality, while this one right into your ear is the truth, right? He said, yeah. I said, what you experienced with light, you could have experienced with everything else if you paid as much attention to your hearing as you did to the light, then you would have that same experience. If you paid as much experience to the light as you paid to your insight, imagine what you can see. Imagine where you would be, right? But what are the walls that prevent me from getting there? Sometimes it's just contentment with where I am. I was like, you know what, I'm good, right? Don't take me any further because I'm not ready. Like Hajj Jamil mentioned, you know, many of us at a certain point, you know, we weren't ready for a lot of the information that, you know, others were giving us. And so we're like, well, you know what, we're only willing to take in so much. But once we open ourselves up to the possibilities of learning, of just learning, not necessarily saying, oh, you know what, I don't want to learn. Because when I say I don't want to learn, what am I saying? I'm saying, listen, don't do me any favors. You know, I have enough information. I remember growing up when I would talk to one of my cousins, and he was older than me. And he would say to me, I'd say something to him, he's like, "Shoo, تعلمني أنت? تعلمني? What are you teaching me?" You know, like, you're teaching me, right? Don't do me any favors. Don't teach me anything. I don't need to know anything that you have to tell me, right? And it's our ego that gets in the way, is what I'm saying, right? So if I truly believe that I'm a believer, and it's not for me to determine, it's for Allah to determine that I'm a believer. It's not for Hajj Alex to say, oh, Sheikh Aous is a believer, right? You know, or Sister Tala to say, you know, Sheikh Aous is a believer. That is great, you know, that alhamdulillah, there's this trust, you know. But what really matters is whether truly I'm a believer between me and Allah, right? And nobody sees that. Nobody can see that, and its reality except for me. And nobody can see that reality of how I am when I'm by myself. Am I still this guy that cares about the prayer and cares about the Salat al-Layl, right? And cares about this sort of thing? Or am I the person who just apparently in front of people does it? I go to the Jama', wallah shu, so that people see me pray, right? I attend Dua Kumail, and some people have commented on this, even though I personally, I think it's still a good thing to do, to pretend to cry, you know, something like that. Sometimes it gets a little excessive, you know, if it looks like the person is acting. But we have clear hadiths that say that if you pretend to cry over Al-Imam al-Hussein or over, you know, trying to seek the pleasure of Allah, that's okay, that you actually get thawab for it, right? Why? Because you're basically, imagine this, if I want to get to the money inside a piggy bank, right? What do? I have to shake it up and smash it open, right? So if that crying and like shaking myself to cry like this is going to shake me inside and wake me up, you know, then that's okay to do, okay? But where the problem comes where I know deep down within myself that I'm doing it to show off, for example, to other people. That's where I have to be careful, okay? That's where I have to be careful. So, let's see, who made a the right of one who trains through knowledge. Very good. Let's read it. Hajj Jamil posted this for us.
Yeah, Sheikh. Now, this was when you were saying we don't want to value you, but we have to value you.
Habibi, that's kind of
You're right. So, and alhamdulillah, it says exactly what you should do towards that.
yeah, the treaties of right.
Respecting you and making sure that you're comfortable.
Habibi, that's kind of you. I appreciate it. So that's a good right to definitely read. Definitely make sure you have the treaties of rights with you. I think though what I'm saying is at the end of the road, it's all about you and Allah. And what Allah uncovers in these verses is exactly that. Is that you can fool everyone, but you can't fool me, Allah says. Right? And that's really what is the takeaway, what we have to contemplate over. Am I that person?
So, Sheikh, I wanted to make a comment. You said there was a person, a Grandmaster Ayatollah, who was criminalizing himself when he was telling himself, this is bad. I shouldn't be doing this. What can you tell me what he was doing? Because
yeah,
I don't think that would feel. I don't think it would work for me.
Yeah. It's basically.
So it's like, is that good? Is that good to do that to yourself?
I think at that level. Okay, so there's a hadith, a beautiful hadith by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salamullah alayhi, where he says that a person should always be in this mindset when it comes to being with Allah, that you're always in a state of taqsir. Al-mu'minu muqassir, right? That a believer is always deficient, right? He says that should be your mindset, right? It's exactly like, let's say, for example, if I'm training for basketball or for football, I always feel like my shot isn't good enough. My speed isn't fast enough. My strength isn't where it should be. And I keep working harder and harder. And what that does is that gives me humility as well, right? So when someone tells me, oh, mashallah, your voice was great when you were reciting, I say, no. My voice is nowhere near, that level. Okay. Imam Sajjad even says it in the Holy Quran. In Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq, he says, Allahumma la tarfa'ni fi nasi darajatan illa hatattani fi nafsi mithlaha. Oh Allah, do not elevate me in the eyes of people except that you have demoted me from within myself the same level. Okay. And that way you always feel deficient, right? So I liked how you expressed it, that this Grand Master, didn't become a Grand Master except by this whole tahdib al-nafs, always working on his behaviors and his mannerisms with Allah, that it's never enough. And it's exactly like, and you'll see this when you become a dad, you're almost there, right? But you know this as a son, okay? That no matter what you did for your dad always, was like, it's not enough. Even if he didn't say it, you know that deep down inside of you, right? Allah yarhamu will recite Fatiha on his soul. That it was never really enough, whether he made it clear to you or whether it was the sense inside of you, right? That your mom, no matter what you do for her, it's never going to be enough to repay her. So imagine Allah. So you're always going to be, again, we go back to the Tawheed, right? We go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being unlimited in his blessings to us and everything that he's given us. If I tap into that and I make that part of my habit to always remind myself that I haven't done enough for Allah. He's done so much for me. There are so many, Allah yarhamu, Allah yarhamu, Allah yarhamu. That's Hajj Jamil and Hajj Hassan Ali is that. That is really the mindset that I should have. And that's the mindset of great athletes. That's the mindset of great businessmen, that, it's never enough. Right? What you've done is never enough. And that's why they keep waking up at 4 a.m. and they keep, grinding, as they say, right? It's the grind. That's what they call it, right? So for us, I'm willing to do that for my, athletic prowess. I'm willing to do that for my wealth. But I need to do that by priority for my relationship with Allah and with others. Okay? And Allah makes it clear. He says, listen, right? So you're not doing me any favors. You're doing yourself a favor, by A, knowing where you are, assessing where you are, and B, realizing that you're always going to be deficient and you can always improve, right? And no matter how much you've improved, you've never improved enough. So can I say, if I become a grandmaster, can I say about myself, oh Allah, كلما شكرتك شكري يفتقر إلى شكر. Every time I thank you, my gratitude to you is deficient in appreciation, right? As one of our imams says. So for sure, in order to improve, you have to be in that state of deficiency. I remember talking to Hajj Najah once, and she said to me in the first days of Zaman International, she said to me, I'm always afraid to think that what I've done is enough. So I always remind myself that Najah, she said it like this, she said, Najah, you haven't done enough. You will never do enough, And if I have that mindset, then look at where I can go. Look at, for example, Hajj Najah, this year she was a CNN hero, right? That's a great achievement, right? What she does for the community is a great achievement, right? When you think that it's never enough, people say to me, when I come to, people say to me, you guys, when you go to Hawza, when do you graduate, right? When do you guys graduate? How many people have asked me this, right? When do you finish? Exactly. Brother Anwar has asked me, Hajj Alex has asked me before, when do you finish, right? And Sheikh Ali will tell you, like, once you go to Hawza, you realize how deficient you are, and how much you still have to learn and do. When you come back to, your community, you realize even more how deficient you are. When you try to give what little that you have, and you realize people benefit, then you realize, oh, I have to go back and get more because people need to learn more. I need to learn more and people need to learn more, right? So holding yourself to that standard that you've never done enough allows you always to be in a state of climbing. There's a beautiful narration by Imam al-Baqir, I believe. It's mentioned in Al-Kafi. And it's that, your days should never be equal. If your days are equal, then you've cheated yourself, right? If today you did less than you did yesterday, then you're in trouble. Then you're in serious trouble with Allah. Your goal always is to improve. So the next day should always be better than the day before. Even if it's, well, I recited, one verse today. Tomorrow I recite 2 verses. Or if I recited the verse today and I didn't understand it, tomorrow I'm going to work on understanding it. Right? I helped my mother, for example, today in, washing the dishes. Tomorrow I'm going to help her in wiping the tables, for example, right? Always think about ways to improve, right? We do it naturally at work, right? We set goals for ourselves to get a promotion. Imagine it that way, that my goal is to get a promotion with Allah. Listen, it's okay to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of fear. Imam Ali says, Tilka ibadatul abid. Okay, he says, this is the worship of a slave. And it's okay to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the reward. He says, Tilka ibadatul tujjar. This is how businessmen worship Allah, for the reward, right? He says, but to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because He is worthy of worship, he says, Tilka ibadatul ahrar. That is the worship of the free, of the liberated. Okay. Our goal is to have such a strong relationship with Allah that we don't need to prove it to anyone. Our deeds speak louder than our words, right? And to be at that level, I have to always be reminding myself that what I've done isn't enough. I have to put myself in that mindset. That's the only thing really, to be honest with you, that and pleasing my parents and my imams, that's the only thing, those are the only things that I need to focus on, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me, to have that deficiency, to feel that sense of deficiency. When it comes to my wealth though, Allah doesn't say that. He says, be content with the sustenance that Allah has given you. And that if it's more, then it's not yours, it's the right of someone else, right? Make sense? Okay, so if anybody has any comments or anything to add, please do. This is a good time to do so. While I pull up
So I'm
the...
not, so I'm not going to hell for not being emotionally, I'm not emotionally crying during Ashura, right?
And no, of course you're not going to hell. But try to pretend, like even if you just put your hand like this. Prophet Muhammad actually says, there's a great narration by Prophet Muhammad where he says that even if you just do that, if you pretend, because he said, he who sheds a tear for my son Hussein will enter heaven, and his face will never see hellfire. So automatically that tells you it's from the sunnah of the Prophet, because Prophet Muhammad used to cry over Imam Hussein before Imam Hussein was even born, right?
Right.
It was, we have clear narrations that he did from our school of thought and from other schools of thought. We also have narrations at his birth, where when Asma gave him the baby and he kissed him on his neck and she saw him crying, she said, why? He said, this son of mine will be killed on the land of Karbala. He will be murdered by the oppressors of my nation. So that tells us right off the bat that it's sunnah to pray for and my crying and my trying to squeeze even one tear becomes connecting with Prophet Muhammad and therefore connecting with Allah. So understanding its importance, its value. Once you understand its value, Hajj, now you believe that you've got to work towards that. What's preventing me from that? So you think about all the things that are preventing you and you try to work on those things. I had some prior lectures. I think you'll find them online. If not, I'll record something for you or send you some information if you like on how to actually get to that. That should be a goal for each and every one of us, okay? We find Imam Ali, as brave as he was as a warrior, when he passes through Karbala, before even his son was born, he stands there and he puts his head down and he cries. He weeps for his son, right? Now you might say, well, it's easy for one to weep for their son, right? Or for their grandson. But at the end of the road, them crying becomes a sunnah because they're exemplars for us according to the Holy Quran. So now I need to figure out why I'm not crying. But the Prophet says, listen, even if you can't figure out why, that one tear, if you don't shed it, even if you pretend, but you do it with sincerity, that eventually will work its way into your core. It's exactly like if you take, for example, I'm trying to think, like when you take, there's a new piece of exercise equipment, Hajj, that is used by those who are training for movies, okay? Or those who are training to lose weight really fast and gain muscle. And this device, basically what it does is, as you're, let's say, you put your hands on it, as you're doing push-ups, or you're doing, I don't know, leg ups, or you're doing whatever, it shakes you. It literally vibrates, okay? And when it vibrates, what it does is that exercise that normally, let's say you're pushing, I don't know, 170, 180 pounds of weight, that shaking causes you to actually be pushing multiples of that weight. Just that little movement that you make has such a profound effect on your workout, okay? And what it does is, and think about something else. Let's say, for example, you have one of those machines that shake, that shake, what do you call it, that make shakes, right? That make shakes.
Yes.
Yes. Right? Or if you hold, for example, the bottle. I have one of those shaker bottles where it has this tiny little thing in it. And then when you put, let's say, if I pour water and I pour fruit and I do that sort of stuff, if I shake it really hard, what happens? Everything gets mixed up, right? And literally everything then, because it gets mixed up, even the hard things that were in there become really soft and malleable. And that's exactly the state that you're doing when you're doing this and you're trying to get affected, and you shake yourself like that, okay? So it's working from the outside in as opposed to the inside out, but it is still going to work, okay? And the Prophet says that if you try to do that, the sincerity in doing that, you will also get the same result, okay? Of going to Jannah, all right? That's important. I remember when I was a kid, my uncle used to, if I'm looking up at the speaker like this, my uncle would like smack me like this, like, put your head down, right? And I'd be like, oh, okay. I put my head down. And then later on, he noticed I'd keep sneaking. He's like, put your hand on your face, son. Put my hand on my face like this, right? And then you know what I do? I like open up my fingers and I try to look up, right? And I didn't understand, like he didn't tell me, for example, why I should do this, right? So I remember when I found the hadith, that why you should do this, I started sharing it with everyone. You know, even when I go during Muharram, one of the first lectures that I'll give is I'll talk about the importance of crying for Imam Hussein salamullah alayhi. I just started off like that. Make sure I get that hadith out of the way so that people are, you know, you come to value why it is that people do this. Because every now and then you also have people who come and say, look at these guys. You know, they're crying for Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein doesn't want your tears, right? Isn't that what we hear? Imam Hussein wants action, right? Like, no, Imam Hussein wants your tears and he wants your action. He wants you to be connected emotionally to him, and he wants you to be connected practically to him, right? In his legacy, correct? So we need to be connected in both. Imam As-Sadiq salamullah alayhi says, "Laysa min shi'atuna." They are not of our followers. "Man qala bi aqwalina wa lam ya'mal bi a'malina wa atharina." Those who say our words but don't do what we do and don't follow our legacy. Part of his legacy is the crying. He cried for the oppressors on the land of Karbala. We all hear this. We say, oh, why did Imam Hussein cry on the land of Karbala? Why did he cry the night before the eve of Ashura? Why did he pray? Why did he cry when he collected his companions and he told them, you're free to go, you know, in the eyes of Allah, you've done everything that you could do. You're free to go in the darkness of night. Nobody will judge you, you know. And the tears that came from him, you know, that night, you know, and the tears on the land of Karbala for the oppressors. Why are you crying? I'm crying because these people, they don't know what they're doing to themselves, right? So, you know, that needs to be part of our repertoire. We even find in ziyarah, by the way, that it says in the book of ziyarah, ahkam al-ziyarah, that shedding one tear when you're asking for permission is a sign that, you know, you have been given permission, you've been granted permission.
Right.
So connecting that way with the imams is very important. Continuation of that hadith, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq continues and says, innama shi'atuna. There's that innama. Surely no other than these people are our Shia. Man qalu bi aqwalina wa amilu bi a'malina wa atharna. Those who say our words and follow our legacy and do the righteous deeds that we do. Right?
Right.
Ahsantum.
Thank you.
Yes, I will share it, inshallah, with you, Hajj Khalil. Hajj Jamil. I have a random question, but it pertains to Ashura. Okay. It's a tatbir question. Let me finish this and then I'll take questions. Okay, is that okay? Let me just read because it's here at 6:25. So we only have a few minutes to cover this, and then inshallah, I'll be at your service, inshallah, after we're done this part. Okay, so context for the revelation of these last verses. In our Shi'i books of tafsir, it says, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا, all the way down to بَلِ اللَّهُ يَمُنُّ عَلَيْكُمْ أَنْ هَدَاكُمْ لِلْإِيمَانِ كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. It says, نزلت في عفكن يوم الخندق, that it was revealed about Afkan on the day of Khandaq. وَذَلِكَ أَنَّهُ مَرَّ بِعَمَّارِ بن يَاسِرٍ. And that is because he passed by Ammar bin Yasir, the great companion, as he was digging the Khandaq, the moat. وَهُوَ يَحْفُرُ الْخَندَقِ وَقَدْ ارْتَفَعَ الْغُبَارِ مِنَ الْحَفْرِ. And it was very dusty because of the digging. فَوَضَعَ كُمُّهُ عَلَى أَنْفِهِ وَمَرْ. So he placed his sleeve on his nose and he passed by, he kept walking. Past Ammar. Ammar said, لا يستوي من يبني المساجد فيصلي فيها راكعا وساجدا كمن يمر بالغبار حائدا يعرض عنه جاحدا معاندا. So what is he saying? He's saying, and do these people equate with one another? One who builds a mosque, prays in it in ruku' and sujood, does he equal a person who passes by, you know, those who are building the mosque and preparing it, right? As they pass by the dust, rejecting it, disbelieving and stubborn. So Afkan, he basically looks at Ammar ibn Yasir and he says to him, Yabna Sauda, O son of the black woman, Iyaya ta'ni, are you talking about me? Right? So he says, ثم أتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. Prophet Muhammad then passes by. فقال له, he says to him, لم ندخل معك لتسب أعراضنا. He said, we didn't become Muslim, and join your team just so that our honor is disgraced. فقال له رسول الله, the Prophet of Allah said to him, صلى الله عليه وآله, قد أقلتك إسلامك فاذهب. I don't need your Islam. Go ahead, leave. Right? Don't do me any favors. And then Allah revealed, يمنون عليك أن أسلموا. قل لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم بل الله يمن عليكم أن هداكم للإيمان إن كنتم صادقين. Don't do Allah any favors because you became Muslim, right? Allah is the one who holds favors over your head for guiding you to faith, right? If you are truthful, then you would realize this. أي لستم صادقين, meaning that you're not truthful in your deen, right? So in Tafsir al-Burhan, he mentions another hadith, and he says that Sheikh Al-Tusi in Misbah al-Anwar, using his chain of narration, brings this hadith up to Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. He said, قال كنت مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم في حفر الخندق. I was with the Prophet when when they were digging the moat around around the city before the battle. وقد حفر الناس, and people were digging. وحفر علي عليه السلام, and Imam Ali was also down there digging the moat. فقال له النبي, the Prophet said to him, صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, بأبي من يحفر وجبرائيل يكنس التراب. He said, basically بأبي means he's swearing by his father, okay, to show the importance of something. Who is digging? And Jibra'il is sweeping the dust, التراب بين يديه, as he is digging. وميكائيل يعينه, and Mikael, the angel, is helping him. ولم يكن يعين أحدا قبله من الخلق, and he didn't help anyone other than him ever from Allah's creations. So then, according to this narration by Sheikh Al-Tusi, that it goes all the way up to Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari, this marfu'a hadith clearly says that this verse was revealed about Imam Ali salamullahi alayhi. Specifically about specifically the verse after, right? Yeah, so let's see what Prophet Muhammad continues to say. This hadith goes on. It says, ثم قال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله لعثمان بن عفان. The Prophet then looks at Uthman ibn Affan, who was one of the caliphs later on after the Prophet died. He says to him, dig, احفر. فغضب عثمان. Uthman got angry. وقال لا يرضى محمد أن أسلمنا على يده حتى يأمرنا بالكد. Does Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, of course he didn't say that. He said, Muhammad it's not enough for him to be pleased that we became Muslims on his hands by his doing. He's not going to be pleased until he commands us to do hard labor. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا قُلْ لَا تَمُنُّوا. They hold favors over your head that they became Muslim. Say to them, you're not doing me any favors. Don't hold any favors over my head because you became a Muslim. But it's Allah who should hold favors over your head, that He guided you to Islam, if you were true in your faith. And so this is basically to clarify that he's not true in his faith, that it's Imam Ali salamullah alayhi who's true in his faith. Ali ibn Ibrahim, he narrates, he says, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا was revealed about Uthman on the day of Al-Khandaq. وَذَلِكَ أَنَّهُ, this is in his tafsir. So Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi in Tafsir al-Qummi. He says, and that is that he passed by Ammar bin Yasir while he's digging. And as the dust was coming up, Uthman is the one, not Kath'an. Uthman was the one who placed his sleeve over his nose, and he just passed by. So Ammar says to him, لا يستوي من يعمر المساجد يظل فيها راكعا وساجدا كمن يمر بالغبار حائدا يعرض عنه جاهدا معاندا. So these were actually a rhyming couplet, 2 verses of poetry. So he looks at Uthman. So Uthman looks at him. التفت إليه عثمان فقال يا ابن السوداء. He's the one that said to him, you know, oh, son of the dark woman or the black woman, are you talking about me? ثم أتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Prophet Muhammad comes along and he says to him, he says to the Prophet, لم ندخل معك لتسبى أعراضنا لتسبى أعراضنا. So he says, we didn't become Muslim so that we're dishonored, right? So the Prophet says to him, قد أقلتك إسلامك فاذهب. You know, take your Islam, give it back to me, and just leave. You know, you're not doing me any favors. I don't need your Islam. Give me your Islam and go. This is huge, by the way. This isn't something that's simple, because remember, Uthman later on became Khalifa. فأنزل الله تعالى يمنون عليك أن أسلموا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this verse until he said, إن الله يعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وهو بصير بما تعملون. And Allah knows exactly what you're doing. So even though you think that, you know, you're showing your status to people and that you're a companion and so on, when in reality, Allah knows what is deep within your heart. Any questions so far?
That verse is 49:15, right?
Verses, this specifically is from قُلْ أَتُعَلِّمُونَ اللَّهَ بِدِينِكُمْ. So the issue of the moat, right? The event of the moat, of digging the moat. And that's, I think, from 16 to 18. If I'm not mistaken, let me see the verses real quick. يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. Yeah, 16 to 18.
Ahsant.
Okay. Okay. So let's see what our Sunni brothers say. Okay, so Sheikh al-Tusi, he gives us some of the Sunni opinions. I'll read it from here. He says that, let's see. He says, Al-Farra says that it was revealed about the Arabs of Bani Asad. So he basically, you know, uses the same group that were accused before in the prior verses, verse 14 and 15. And he basically extrapolates. He says, oh, this was about them also. He says that they said, you know, we came to you with our families and with everything that we own, and the Arabs came to you, their Arab tribe. Remember, it was a tribe that was between Mecca and Medina, who ended up becoming Muslim just to protect themselves, not necessarily because they really believed. And basically he says that Al-Farra is of the opinion that, you know, it was about that same tribe, okay? He says, وَقَالَ الْحَسَنْ نَزَلَتْ فِي قَوْمٍ مُسْلِمِينَ قَالُوا. He says, Al-Hasan says that it was revealed about a group of Muslimin that said, we became, oh, Messenger of Allah, let's see, we became Muslim, we fought with you, and, you know, this is how, you know, this is how you treat us. So anyway, so let's see. I don't like here. There's not enough information in that section. He usually gives a lot more, but for this section, he hasn't given us a lot. So I'm going to go back to Mujahid. Mujahid, I checked him. Mujahid actually doesn't say the reason for the revelation at all. Okay, he just says. No, he actually doesn't mention anything at all. But Muqatil, if you remember, Mujahid is 104. That's when he died. But Muqatil is 150 when he died. So he's let's say about 50 years after him. So he says, يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. He says it was revealed about a people from the Arabs, from Bani Asad ibn Khuzaymah, which is the same opinion as Al-Farra. قدموا على النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. They came to the Prophet. They said to him, جئناك وأتيناك بأهلنا طاعين. We came with our families, you know, out of our own volition. عفوا على غير قتال. To prevent ourselves from battle with you. وتركنا الأموال والعشائر. We left our wealth, we left our tribes. وكل قبيلة في العرب قتلوا. While every other tribe of the Arabs, they fought against you حتى أسلموا, until they became Muslim. فلنا عليك حق, we have a right over you. فاعرف لنا ذلك. Then know that we have that right. Recognize, as they say. They're telling him to recognize them. So that's when Allah revealed يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ يَا مُحَمَّدْ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. And Allah commands him, reveals to him to say to them, don't hold any favors over my head, right? Your Islam is for yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should hold a favor over your head. So that's Muqatil. And then we have Ibn al-Jawzi, who is from 597. He died 597 after Hijrah. He says that he brings it to Surah Al-Fath, and then let's see. Okay, yeah, he doesn't really say who exactly it was revealed about. He kind of also extrapolates, sort of. He says that Zajjaj says that they don't give the reason for the revelation. He actually doesn't mention it, but he does refer to a narration by Ibn Abbas that he says that he read that Abu Amr said in how it should be read, yeah, he doesn't focus on the reason for revelation. He just focuses on the meaning. Okay, let's see what Suyuti says. Suyuti, we said he brings all of the narrations usually and all the different opinions. So he says أخرج ابن المنذر والطبراني وابن مردوي. So here he's given us Ibn Munzir in his tafsir, Tabarani in his tafsir, Ibn Mardaway in his tafsir, by way of Hasan ibn Abdullah ibn Abi Awfa أن أناسا من العرب. So this is the narration of Hasan that we mentioned earlier. He says that a group of Arabs said to the Prophet, Aslamna, we became Muslim and we did not fight you. وَلَمْ نُقَاتِلْكَ كَمَا قَاتَلَكَ بَنُو فُلَانٍ, as the other tribes fought against you. فَأَنزَلَ اللَّهُ يَمُنُّ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. So Allah revealed that they hold a favor over your head because they became Muslim. And then Nasa'i and Al-Bazzaz and Ibn Mardaway narrated by way of Ibn Abbas that it was revealed about Banu Asad, the same group from the verses 14 and 15, إِلَى رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ. They said, we became Muslim, أَسْلَمْنَا وَقَاتَلَكَ الْعَرَبِ, and the other Arab tribes fought against you and we didn't. And so Allah revealed this verse. Ibn al-Dhurais and Ibn Jarir narrated by way of Abi Qulaba, by way of Prophet Muhammad, that he said, I was given أعطيت السبع مكان التوراة وأعطيت المثاني مكان الإنجيل وأعطيت كذا وكذا وفضلت بالمفصل. Anyway, this verse is neither here nor there. It doesn't really help us here, but it looks like that Ibn Dhurais, Ibn Jarir, by way of Abi Qulaba, it doesn't give the reason for the revelation. أخرج ابن أبي حاتم وابن مردوي عن الحسن, same al-Hasan here. They say that there's a narration that says لما فتحت مكة جاء ناس. When Mecca was opened to the Muslims, the Prophet, these people of the Arab tribes came to the Prophet ﷺ and said exactly that. We've become Muslim. We didn't fight you like others fought you. And so Allah revealed this verse. We have also two more. I'd say one more opinion that says that Ibn Sa'd narrates by way of Muhammad ibn Ka'b al-Qardi, who said 10 came to the Prophet ﷺ, 10 people from Bani Asad to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ at the beginning of the 9th year of Hijrah, after Hijrah. And with them was Hadrami ibn Amir and Dirar ibn al-Azwar and Wabisa ibn Ma'bad and Qatada ibn al-Qanif, as well as Salama ibn حبيش النقادة ibn Abdullah ibn Khalaf and Talha ibn Khuwaylid. And the Prophet ﷺ was in his mosque with his companions. They said salam to them, and one of them was speaking on the behalf of the rest of them. And he said, "O Messenger of Allah, we were with you. We testified that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, that He has no partner, and that you are His worshipper and His messenger. And we have come to you, O the Prophet of Allah, and we have come to you. You didn't come to us. وَنَحْنُ لِمَّنْ وَرَاءَنَا سِنٌ." And we come in peace. And so Allah, meaning that we not we come in peace, and we have submitted, he says. Okay, so they claim that this is the reason why the verse was actually revealed. So we find so far then that really there is an agreement that it was a group of people at the end of the road, or one person that went to the Prophet, said to him, we did you a favor of becoming Muslim. We didn't fight against you. We submitted, right? And basically saying, why do you treat us this way? Because why else would someone say to you, we did you a favor by, imagine, let's say, for example, you're with your brother. This always happens between brothers, not brothers and sisters, usually with brothers, okay? Where brother would, of course, not Hajj Hassan and Hajj Jamil, they're beyond that, right? We're saying, well, remember the time I did this for you? You know how I did that for you? Didn't you borrow for me $20 last month? Where's my $20? Right? Right? So what we don't realize is that when I helped him, he was doing me a favor, not the other way around. Because I got the thawab. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we should not spoil our amal with men. Right? What's men? Al-minna. Men is basically holding a favor over someone's head. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want to do that because if someone does something good for you, you shouldn't hold a favor over their head. So here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to know that this group of people, in reality, whoever they may have been, whether they were Uthman, and we have more than one narration that says it was Uthman, okay? We have more than one narration from the Sunni school of thought that says it's from Bani Asad. But in the Sunni school of thought, we also have different versions. One that says only 10 came, one that says, they were unnamed members of the tribe, and so forth. But the Shia scholars, by way of Ahl al-Bayt, they give us the narrations that are very specific, right? Similar to the last one that mentions names. But that one doesn't mention why they had any sort of contention against Prophet Muhammad that they would say we're holding favors, right? So this is where we have a little bit of a discrepancy. In the Shia narrations, we have names, two narrations that say, by two different ways that say it was Uthman, both by very well-known narrators and companions of the Prophet who are trustworthy. And then we have the one narration that says that it was Kath'an. And that could be tasheef. Tasheef meaning that, a letter was changed, in the print, a dot was missing, or an alif was dropped, or something like that. So Kath'an could have been Uthman, because the ayn is there, the tha is there, and the noon is there. So it could be that in that version, right, that they copied that hadith from, that the alif was dropped, okay? Or that the alif came forward. You know how when you type, sometimes you type, for example, if you're typing and, you might type the D before the N, So this is actually something. It's actually a thing. It's called tasheef. Tahrif and tasheef. Tahrif is when you change a letter. Tasheef is basically when you change you change like a phrase, for example. Okay, it's in the suhuf itself. You change the sahifa, so you have to change like a phrase. But tahrif is changing a letter. So this could be more tahrif, okay, than anything else. This could happen very commonly. So far in the narrations from the Shia school of thought, it seems to be that it's Uthman. From the Sunni school of thought, it seems to be from Bani Asad, and we have one narration that says that it's specific people, 10 people that approached the Prophet, but it doesn't give you context. While the narrations from the Shia school of thought do give you a lot of context, and that it is the Khandaq, the digging of the trench of the Maut for the Battle of Khandaq. Okay, so now that we have context from both schools of thought, you can make your decision which one you believe is closer. I've made my conclusion, as you can tell. Okay, that because the context is given more clearly, and we understand why they said what they said. And we have 3 narrations from solid sources, right? One seems to have tasheef in it. It has the letters Ain, Tha, and Nun, Kath'an, right? But it's missing the Alif. It seems it kind of, we say it did zuhaf, meaning that it moved somehow in the print, okay? All right, let's see. Hadith again, I will share that with you, Hajj Jameel. You don't have to answer my question if you don't wish to. I know it's a rough topic. I apologize. No, I mean, I could, if you want, I could answer it on the side if you like, sister. Well, right. Does anybody have a question about tatbir so that I talk about it, or everybody's okay with tatbir? I mean, okay, and understand the topic and don't have necessarily, have taken an opinion, let's say, about it. Okay, Sister Hadil has to leave us. Don't forget us from your dua. There are a lot of people that need your dua. Okay, Sister Melek says, yeah, she would like to hear it.
Oh no, I meant to say like I've gotten an opinion on it too.
Oh, you have an opinion on it. Okay, good. Good. All right, good. All right, so we usually the tatbir question, subhanallah, comes during Muharram. So you're beating the curve, mashallah, bismillah. Okay, so inshallah, I'll address it with you separately here, inshallah. Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other questions pertaining to the verses or to this topic?
I have a question on the point of tahrif.
Yes.
Usually you hear it in like the sense of people purposely changing like verses or letters and stuff. What is the difference when people do it like accidentally versus purposefully, and how do you know that one might have been accidentally versus purposefully?
So okay, well, how you know is in the fact that in several ways. You can know in several ways. Our maraja, when they're actually doing their derivation, okay? So in Bahth Kharij, I see this, I've seen, our teachers are teaching us this, how to actually read the hadiths and how to compile and collect the hadiths and figure out what is authentic and what isn't. There are several ways. One way is to look at the chain of narrators, okay? Meaning those who we got this narration from, okay? So we look at each person in the chain, we look at their biography, basically. And we have books of biographies called Kutub al-Rijal. Rijal, of course, not all of the narrators were men. There are women narrators as well, okay? But the majority of them are men. So it's called al-Rijal, okay? And there's a science called Ilm al-Rijal, okay? The science of narrators. And then we have Ilm al-Hadith, meaning the science of narrations. So once I classify, whether the chain fully is generation after generation and each one is trustworthy and Ithna Ashari, that's one classification of hadith called hadith sahih or mu'tabar, okay? If I find one person that hasn't been authenticated, in that we don't have anything that says, oh, he's trustworthy, but we know that he's been complimented, meaning that people say that he's good, but we don't have something that specifically says he's thiqa, that he's trustworthy, okay? We call this hadith, but he's still Ithna Ashari. We call this hadith mamduh or hasan. We put that aside, okay? We can also have a hadith that is is considered to be muwathaq, meaning that the chain of narrators is there. They're all Shia Ithna Ashari except maybe one or two, and they might not be of the Shia school of thought, or they might not even be Muslim, but they are deemed to be trustworthy, okay? In that they don't lie. They weren't known to lie. This hadith is called muwathaq, for example, okay? So we set that aside. We go through another hadith and we find that one person is missing or more from the chain, from the generational chain. We call this mursal. Why? Because we have someone who's missing in the chain. And this makes it a weaker hadith. The weakest type of hadith is the one that has people that are unauthenticated or that are missing from the chain, generationally speaking. Okay? We have a hadith that's also called maqtu'. A type of da'if hadith is maqtu', meaning that the chain of narrators is all good, but we have one generation that's missing. This is also mursal, but of the type that is maqtu'. We also have a hadith that is da'if, meaning that we have all the chain of narrators, okay? Meaning it's still part of da'if. So mursal is still part of da'if, but it's a little stronger, than just da'if, period. Da'if would have one person who is unknown, or one person who's not Shia Ithna Ashari, or one person who is a fasiq, who's corrupt, okay? When we say he's not Shia Ithna Ashari, meaning he hasn't been authenticated to tell the truth or to be trusted, okay? So now I take, let's say, the hadith that is good. Oh, and then there are hadith, of course, that we have to know we're given in a state of taqiyya. So the chain of narrations might be 100% good, sahih. But then when I look at the hadith itself, I find that it gives the Sunni opinion 1 year, and then the next year it gives another opinion, which is a Shia opinion. That tells me that this hadith was actually given in times of taqiyya, in times when the Imam was in danger or the Shia were in danger, okay? So to protect the Shia. So this hadith, we would recognize its historical context, even though it's sahih, but we wouldn't take it. Got it? Okay? But the other hadith, if let's say, for example, no, everything is there, the matan is there, meaning the hadith itself is good, then we would take it. Now when I take it, and I have to look at every single word, okay? If one of the words, let's say I have multiple hadiths, they're all talking about the same topic, like this one about Uthman, okay? We have 3 hadiths, each one says that it was Uthman that was intended, except for one that mentions a guy by the name of Kath'an. Okay? So here, hadiths all have the same context, right? 3 different sources, all sources. So who could this Kath'an be? The only thing that it can be is we have to look at the letters of the word Kath'an. We have a kaf, we have a tha, right? Ka'than. We have a ayn, we have a tha, and we have a nun. Okay, ka'than. So the ayn is there, the tha is there, the nun is there. I'm missing an alif and a mim, right? But the kaf is at the beginning. So since it narrates the narration exactly the same way as the others, gives the same context as the others, most likely this word has been changed. What has happened? Tasheef has happened. There's been or tahrif. There's been a change in the letters. This tahrif, is it on purpose or is it not? We have to look at different versions of the books that were compiled that contain this narration, specifically with this chain of narrators. So I might look at a really old version of Al-Kafi, if this was in Al-Kafi, okay? And then I'd look at a newer version of Al-Kafi, and a middle type of, let's say I look at one from, I don't know, from the time of Sheikh Al-Kulayni, right? And then I look at one from, let's say, I don't know, 1000 AH, and one from, I don't know, 1300 AH, as an example. One from 500 AH. I compare all of those, and then what do I see? I see the same narration, exactly the same way, but I find one of them has a problem with the letter. That at one point, those letters changed. Most likely, I will find the original with the same letters, but maybe one of the letters has been erased a little, right? So whoever printed it might have changed it, because in those days, the way they used to print is called طباعة حجرية, which means they literally used to print off of stone. It would be imprinted, just like you would stamp, for example, it would be stamped into stone. And that's how we would know. Now, how are we going to know this, as lay people, right? Unless someone tells you these details, like me, or you go to Hausa and you study, you're not going to know really, right? So that's why we always say, be careful what hadiths that you do use in relay. Make sure that you check them before you publish them. Check them with a scholar, beforehand. This is very important. If you don't have access to a scholar, or you think it's a really beautiful hadith and you want to push it out, always put the citation, put the source. That way you don't have the sin of propagating false information. Say, oh, I found this hadith that has beautiful meanings. It's reported by way of so-and-so, from this book. That's the best way to do it. Does that help? Ahla wa sahla. May Allah bless you, inshallah. Any other questions?
Just an opinion. I mean, it's very complicated what you have to go through and that was what I was going to ask you, and you kind of answered it. It's very complicated, because it's like, I think about it sometimes when people bring up hadiths about Imam Ali and all that, and I'm just like, how do you verify that this was said, or he said to do this, or how do you, I mean, we weren't there, generation, we die, a new generation comes about. I mean, how do you verify that this is legitimate? So you kind of gave me an idea what you're doing. It's very complicated.
It is. And it does require expertise, and it requires years of expertise. For example, my teachers that are at the middle level, at Sutuh level, for example, Hausa is Muqaddimat, introductory level, which is like 3 to 4 years. And then Sutuh, which can range anywhere from, like 5 years to even 10 years, depending on how fast you're going and how detailed you go into the subject matter. And then you go into Bahth Kharij, which is like basically postgraduate studies, okay? So the teachers that are teaching you at the lower levels aren't necessarily, mujtahideen, meaning that they're studying probably in the higher level of Sutuh, they're studying under those. Move on to that level and you see what the jurists are saying and how they're dealing with as Sayyid Muhammad Ridha Sistani told us in the last class I remember we were in, he said, literally, you have to live in the time of the Imams. Your goal as a jurist is to live in the time of the Imams, to understand how the language was used, how the words were used. So you have to go into, you literally become a linguist, you have to know the grammar really well. You have to know the eloquence in speech really well. You have to know all of the older books of language and of grammar, and you have to really go back into that and see how the language was used. You have to go back into the poetry of the time, go back into the history of those who wrote history at that time and see what were the words, how were they used. Because even if I read a word today, that same word might be used today, but for a different meaning. Like, for example, the word train, qatar. Qatar in the days of the Prophet was different than today. Qatar, which to us today is a train, just a regular train, right? To them was basically a caravan of camels, right? We say sayyara. Sayyara for us is a car, right? But in those days, sayyara were a bunch of people who literally were walking together to get somewhere, right? So these new words, contemporary words, were taken from those old meanings, used metaphorically, but then finally they were literally abandoned and the new meaning stuck. And it became a new reality for that term. As for example, let's say somebody comes to you, and I'll simplify things here so that it becomes clear. For example, the book Nahj al-Balagha, okay? If I take short sayings or sermons of Imam Ali salamullah alayhi from Nahj al-Balagha, I can feel very comfortable taking those ahadith. Why? Because the compiler himself is a Sharif al-Radi. And Sharif al-Radi was literally the marja' of the highest marja' for all the Shia. He was a student of Sheikh al-Mufid. Before him was his brother Sharif al-Murtada. And after him was the Sheikh al-Tusi. They were all the top maraja' in their time. And they existed in the time of the lesser occultation as well. which brings them closer to the time of hadith, of Ahl al-Bayt. Okay? So if you take books that are authenticated by the maraja themselves, look, for example, a brother came to me the other day and he said, oh, I found a great book of tafsir by Sheikh Habib al-Kadhimi. I said, Barakallah, may Allah bless him, inshallah. He says, I'm really benefiting from it. I said, Mumtaz, that's great. He said, you should really read it. For me, the way I saw it is, you know what, he's not a mujtahid. So, you know, it's great, you know, what he's going to give might be a good compilation or, you know, but I need to find out what a marji' who's at the highest level, you know, or at the level of being a jurist, like Allama Tabtaba'i, like Sheikh al-Tusi in his Tibyan, you know, like Ali ibn Ibrahim al-Qummi, who was during those days and that time, you know, one of the oldest tafsirs that we have, or another book called Tafsir al-Askari that some say is related to Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, even though they have differing opinions on it. Those older versions of tafsir were very narration based. Okay, they were very narration based. They would give you the narration and tell you this is the reason why it was revealed, and these are the meanings of the words. Period. And that's what Sheikh al-Tusi does. He gives you, you know, he gives you the linguistic understanding of the verses, the different versions, how it's read by the different qira'at, the recitations. He gives you the opinions of the Sunni brothers. Then he gives you the hadith and his opinion on it. Allama Tabtaba'i does something very similar, but he gives a philosophical dissertation, and then he gives the different opinions, and then the Sunnah, and then Shia, and then he gives his opinion at that. And he also gives the narrations, bahthan riwa'i. He gives an actual discourse that is just riwayat. But it's very comprehensive. Sheikh al-Tusi is very to the point. He gives you what you need to know. That's why I've been referring to him more than Allama, even though I did mention al-Mizan several times and I said what he gave. But since we were going through the different Sunni sources, it defeated the purpose. It would be very redundant to go through, for example, what he said, especially when his opinion is the same as Sheikh al-Tusi. I hope that helps, right? So there are certain books then, like for example, if you take the book, for example, Kashf al-Ghumma, or you take the book, for example, Kanz al-Ummal, or you take the book, as an example, Al-Ikhtisas, okay, or Al-Khisal, or Amal al-Sheikh al-Tusi, or Amal al-Sheikh al-Mufid, or you take Kamal al-Ni'ma wa Tamam al-Din wa Kamal al-Ni'ma, right, by Sheikh al-Saduq, or you take the book of the 4 books of Hadith, Al-Kulayni, Al-Alama al-Kulayni, Al-Istibsar, Al-Tahdhib, and Man La Yahdharuhu al-Faqih, you know, these are books that, you know, you can depend on, that they will be more right than not. Not that they might not have, like for example, the 4 books that I mentioned, the main books of Hadith, they do include ahadith that are weak. They do, you know, so you would have to decipher, you'd have to know how to decipher, right? But for the other works like Ikhtisas, you know, Amal al-Mufid, Amal al-Tusi, Amal al-Saduq, Kamal al-Din wa Tamam al-Ni'ma, these are majalis that were literally given by these ulama to their students, and they already checked all the information. That's how we know it's authentic. We also know that the authenticity, Hajj Mike, is based on it's the scholars that pass it down to one marji' passes it down by permission. You know, I don't know if you were at that lecture where I explained how it is that even the system of marji'iyah was established, that it was established from the time of the Prophet when he established the train-the-trainer system, right? Where he trains Imam Ali, he trains the companions around him. He says, Salman is of us, or Ahl al-Bayt. Don't say Salman the Persian, say Salman the Muhammadan, right? Move forward in every generation of Imam. We have their close companions and their students, and they're authenticated that way, you know? So we have hadiths that tell us that an Imam, Salamullah alayhi, authenticated this person and says, this person is thiqa. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq says this about Zurara, his closest companion. Imam al-Ridha says this about Yunus ibn Abd al-Rahman. Imam al-Hadi says it about, for example, al-Amari, the first ambassador. Imam al-Hasan Askari says it about, and some others, right, who are known to be part of the system of authentication. And it's that system of authentication that is basically like a degree, right, a piece of paper, a degree that says this person is qualified for fatwa. He's a mujtahid and people must follow him. So when Imam Rida says, someone comes to Imam Rida, he says, it's very hard for me to reach you, so because I live very far. In my area, who is the person that I should go to get my, information about my religion? He said, alayka bi Yunus ibn Abd al-Rahman. Go to him, he's your marja, get your information from him. Yunus ibn Abd al-Rahman was known in the time of Imam Rida that he would literally, Imam Rida would ask him, do you sit with people and you answer their questions? He said, yes. He said, surely I love to see someone like you amongst the people, right? Answering their questions, who represents us. And that shows you he's been authenticated as a jurist who knows, who has knowledge. And so here, now, if Yunus ibn Abd al-Rahman teaches another student and he gives him permission because he has permission from the Imam, and then that student gives permission by authenticating his other student to be a mujtahid, that's how the system of marji'iyah was created up until the greater occultation. Okay, that system continued. So literally the entire span of the experience, the Islamic experience, let's say, from the time of the Prophet up until the greater occultation was structured to prepare the Muslimin for the greater occultation through the system of marji'iyah. And that's why it's important to follow a marja, because if you go around, like we said yesterday, and you pick a little bit of this, and you pick this medicine, you pick that medicine, you try this medicine, you try that medicine, and you don't know who's who, then you might end up, causing more sickness in your deen than health, right? That's why it's important to go to the authentic maraja that have literally a degree, that says by their teachers who are grand maraja themselves, that say, my apple of my eye, fruit of my heart, my dear son Fulan, has reached the level of ijtihad, and I see that people can now follow him, right? And so he becomes worthy of being followed, right?
And this keeps going on. I mean, this continues, right? From like, we're not going to be here forever. It goes to the next generation. It goes, you pick somebody that's very reputable, and let them take on the responsibility after that.
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. Exactly how it works. Imagine, for example, let's say in certain sciences or even in history, how do we know that certain historical events occurred before? We have scholars of history, right? Who authenticate, books from historians from before and preserve them for us, right? It's the same system. Same thing with medicine, right? So same thing with any other science or field of learning. Okay, once our Shia student organization at my university wanted to watch a lecture for Ramadan and argued about whether to stream a lecture by a scholar or just a lecture. This discussion reminded me how highly we regard any scholar. Imagine the Grand Maraj. We don't nearly know enough about what they say or take into consideration that their words are out of there for us to read. It's sad when we want to interpret things ourselves and think we know more, when these issues are way more complicated than we realize. So thank you for reminding. Alhamdulillah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept, inshallah. That's our role, to try as much as possible to share information with everybody, inshallah. I know tonight was the last night for this series, right? So I know we'll be starting another series up, inshallah. Hajj Alex and I were discussing this the other day. So I guess the information will be sent out to you by Hajj Alex, by you and I, bi'awnihi ta'ala. Until then, if nobody has any other questions, then I take permission to leave because I have a class to give in like 15 minutes.
Is there a way we can ask you the question on the side, since you have to go right now?
Yeah, here, I'll put my number up. You can WhatsApp me, okay?
Thank you.
Anybody, you're all welcome to WhatsApp me. I'll put my number and my email too, depending on which you prefer. 903.
Thank you, Sheikh.
No problem. Oops. That's my number, and my email is this. All right. Feel free anytime. And the best way to communicate with me is to text me first. So if you want to talk to me, you have something important where you'd rather talk than text or send me a message, then just message me and tell me when are you available to talk, and I'll organize a time, inshallah, to be able to talk to you. Hajj Alex and I do that all the time.
Sheikh, I have a very quick question.
Yes, brother.
Do you know of any marja that started off by, like, they grew up in an English country, they grew up speaking English, and they had to teach them, they had to learn Arabic on their own. They weren't born into the Arabic language. Like, they started completely from scratch and they moved up.
Not English. Afghani, Iranian, and Pakistani. Yes. And even Indian in origin. But English, no. We don't have anybody who originally was born as an English speaker and then became a marja. I don't know anybody. Yeah.
Shukran.
Any other questions? Okay then. All right. So if there are no more questions, inshallah, Ahla wa sahla, Sister Jannah, may Allah bless you. Remember us all in your dua. We give the thawab of our discussion, of what we learned, inshallah, what we discussed, to Al-Imam Al-Hujjah, salamullahi alayhi, for surely he looks down upon us, him and Ahl al-Bayt, and it makes them happy to see us mention their names and their hadiths, and to learn more about the scholars of Ahl al-Bayt and what they teach us. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the reward also to all of your dearly departed, inshallah, of your families and those of the mu'mineen and mu'minat. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repays the debt of all those who are in debt. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removes oppression from all those who are oppressed. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala returns the estranged to their homelands and frees, liberates all those who are enchained in prisons and are innocent. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supports our brothers and sisters who have volunteered at UNI to make this program possible, and those around the world who are making programs such as this possible, so that the knowledge of Ahl al-Bayt reaches the hearts of the believing women and men, inshallah, around the world. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي يا ربي على سيدنا محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين والفاتحة على أرواح المرحومين مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.